Hello, everyone. I'm Francesca. Welcome to the very first episode of the New Media Retailer Podcast. Well, this may be the first. We're not sure. We have to see how this goes. But if you're watching this, it made the cut, and we didn't just save it for the archives. But our first guest is President and CEO of New Media Retailer, Keegan Edwards. Keegan, thanks for joining.
Francesca, thanks for having me. Glad we get to kick this one off together, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that this one goes well so it makes the cut.
Yes, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. So Keegan, you know me, I just have to go out and call out the obvious of the name of our podcast and the fact that you are our first guest. So our business name is New Media Retailer, the name of our podcast, also New Media Retailer. And our first guest is the president and CEO of New Media Retailer. So you may find that a common theme. We're going to try to say our business name as many times as humanly possible throughout the course of this interview. But for those of you who may be unfamiliar with NMR or maybe just stumbled upon this podcast, thank you for joining. And Keegan, do you want to share a little bit about what we do?
Sure. And I'm going to touch on that point that you just made too about the New Media Retailer name across the board. So we might be taking it overboard, certainly, but I think I think there's definitely a lesson in that too, because I think actually the error that we see more often is that sometimes stores don't take it far enough, right? When they are trying to brand themselves online, we might see, the website has a certain color palette, looks one way, and then they go to Facebook page and they use a picture of, let's just say, a store employee as the profile picture, and they have a different kind of cover photo that doesn't show their store. And then you go to Twitter or Pinterest, depending on how involved they are across the web, all of a sudden the branding's not consistent across the board, right? So maybe we're taking it overboard, like I said, but what we're trying to accomplish here, and we've made the mistakes in the past because we've operated under different brands and been expanded, and people kind of say, oh, I know you as pet store websites, or I know you as something else. So that branding consistency, we're going from one end of the spectrum back to the other, but I do think there's a lesson in that, and that always pay attention to, what you're naming things and how your logo and brand's showing up, so people really remember you and know exactly who you are.
I definitely feel like that's one thing that hasn't changed throughout the course of my time with New Media Retailer, is that importance of consistent brand messaging and how important it is to have some similarity between website, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, your email blast, whatever that may be. I would say over the course of 10 years, so many things have changed in our industry, products, services, whatever it may be. That's certainly one that has stayed super constant.
Yeah, for sure. So to answer your question, New Media Retailer, I'm going to try not to say New Media Retailer over and over. We can't go too far with the branding, but also known as NMR, as we call ourselves. But we started, actually our company dates back, we're an outgrowth of Circulars Unlimited, which some people may be familiar with. We've been in the industry a long time, but there's pretty extensive experience working with stores. So brick and mortar, independent retail, small businesses across the country, doing everything from print advertising, the penny saver, our free publication paper is a part of the overall business too, that we are kind of an outgrowth of. So basically serving small independent businesses with marketing solutions. That's always kind of been the bread and butter. And we've always been different in that we actually manage things for them. So there's a lot of do-it-yourself type software things out there that really put a pretty significant time and effort burden on the independent retail stores. But for us, we've always tried to serve small business owners with marketing solutions that we help them take care of and make effective and use to drive sales for their business. So our entire focus is building websites, email marketing, digital ad campaigns, managing social media in a way that drives sales for independent retailers. And that's pretty much what New Media Retailer is all about.
Sure. So a question I often get asked, whether I'm talking to a retail store or potentially like interviewing a potential employee, is, what makes New Media Retailer different? It's not a secret in this space. Anybody can build a website. Your brother's cousin's nephew, whoever it may be, can build a website. And one thing I always kind of use when I'm answering that question is we're different because we're a tech company who has probably triple the size of a customer service team than we do a development team. We're so focused on customer service, and it's kind of just a big part of what we do. but I'm interested, why customer service? Why is that so important to us? And what would you answer about what makes us different?
Yeah, I mean, coming from the standpoint of a small business owner, myself and new media retailer, when we choose vendors to work with, we're often looking for a partnership, right? So we just worked with an agency that called Freshy Sites that we were really pleased with the work, specifically because of the effort that went into providing us with some excellent customer service and support along the way and throughout the project. And that's extended for us even into the support environment. So for me, and I kind of mentioned them because that's the vendor experience, right? And that's what we want the experience to be for each of the independent retailers that entrust us with this. Their websites are really important and ever more growing important part of their business being successful. So when things go wrong with it, when things aren't optimized to the degree that they want it to be, when things aren't as effective or there's questions, confusions, or things break, that website, and whether I say website because that's kind of the core of what we do, but the other elements of our marketing services too, it's really important to have somebody help guide you in the right direction, be there to help fix things when they're wrong, help you take the next step too, because with each of these things, there's kind of a graduation process into better and better and more effective ways of doing things. And so that guidance throughout that process is pretty crucially important. So I think customer service and account management has always been kind of a core fundamental for us, because that when you're in small business, when you own a small business, when you work for a small business, there's a lot of hats that you have to wear already, and being asked to do everything or manage everything yourself really becomes an impossibility to get that to the level you need it to be for your business to be successful. So in our environment, that's always been a huge core tenet, because we know, right, we're customer focused. We know for our customers to be most successful, we got to have the experts on our side who are there to guide them and help execute everything for them. And we look for their participation along the way with that. So, I mean, with us, that's certainly a core element of our value proposition and what makes us different. The other two things are really SEO. That's a pretty big one for us, local SEO. We've always realized that that's a way that stores acquire customers in their market. Somebody looks for a hammer, they look to start a project, redo their kitchen, or they just got a new puppy and they're looking for where to buy food and treats, and they care about the health and well-being of that animal. They're going to go to Google, right? That's where we're going to ask a lot of questions about how to do things, about where to find things, about what we should be doing. So we know that gaining new business often starts with a search online. And there's a lot of data that supports that at this point. So SEO has kind of always been a core tenet of what we do. And that kind of parlays into, Google ads, search ads, digital ads, that all kind of comes along with being where your customers are. And then the other piece for us, besides service and SEO, it's really developed in the last couple of years has been our ability to merchandise products for stores. That's pretty different for us. Some vendors have ways of helping you get products on your site, but not in a manner where they're categorized, they're connected to your point of sale system, they're updated consistently with inventory, price, product image, description, appropriate category, and they come off your website when you don't sell it anymore, and they go back up on your website when you do, come off when you're out of stock, or display that it's out of stock, go back when they do, update your prices when those change, in a very easy way for the retailer to manage. So I think that whole catalog process is one that really differentiates us at this point too.
Sure, absolutely. I definitely want to touch on local SEO. I feel like it is such a hot topic right now, especially post-COVID, or certainly not post-COVID, but post-pandemic, and kind of coming out of that experience of, so many things being shut down, and really relying on, getting products to customers in ways that were safe and quick, and being able to present that information online. But before we get there, I want to touch a little bit about why do you want to do this podcast, and what are you hoping retail stores will take away from this, just so stores have a little bit of an understanding about, what it is we're hoping to tell here.
Yeah, so I mean, this one's a great way to kick it off. I'm glad you asked, kind of brought up that topic, because our goal is to help stores learn more about the ways that they can be successful, and that takes, that's taken any number of different manifestations over the years. We've always done webinars, like one-on-one webinars. We've always done seminars at shows. But podcasting is obviously growing and is huge at this point and continues to grow at a fast rate. So we know that people use this medium to learn about new things for themselves personally and for their business. And we have a pretty broad network of experts that we work with. We work with other people. We have vendor partners, POS companies that focus on local, independent, small business owners. And then at the same time, we work with tons of stores. We work with thousands of stores across the country. So we can we hear success stories all the time. We bring them up in our meetings every single week of this store is doing this with loyalty. That store is doing this with local SEO. This store had a huge win by building their second location and creating their product mix a little bit differently. We share these stories internally and we talk about them. I really want to surface those stories. So I want to surface those stories, and we'll be having a lot of special guests on this podcast who are from different parts of the industry, retailers, manufacturers, some of our affiliate kind of corporate distribution partners, and talk to them about what they're seeing, what efforts their company is going through, what changes and transformations are working for their business. And I think that we've always heard that question too from other stores. What are other stores like me doing that's working? What are they doing to be successful? So now instead of saying, well, I heard this or heard that, not kind of having that catalog, we can put it all in one place and say, well, here's a whole bunch of conversations with store owners just like you about what they're doing to be successful. So I'm excited to share that through this podcast.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think that's very well said. Shifting gears a little bit, one thing on this podcast, I don't want to focus so much on the shutdown that took place, but I want to talk a lot about it happened and where are we going from here? It's, still happening in some places, some more than others. But where are we going from here? So you had touched on local SEO. I feel like local SEO is something we have talked about so much, especially pre-pandemic. People were always wanting to be found in Google, but that specific concept of local SEO, and especially as it relates to curbside pickup and local delivery, which of course, sort of really blew up through the pandemic. Where did you see that shift happen most with local SEO? Do you feel like, it became more intensified during the pandemic? Do you feel like it's always been relevant? And what do you think is maybe like the most important thing, one thing that a store can do for local SEO to be successful there?
So, local SEO definitely played a role during the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic in terms of importance. I think that, when we talk about local SEO, it's kind of broad. So I'm going to bring that into like a very specific use case or context. Your Google My Business listing as a small business owner. That was a source of pretty critical information for both the consumer and the business owner during the pandemic, right? And Google released some tools to say, do you allow in-store shopping? Do you not? Do you offer store pickup? Do you not? Is curbside pickup an option? Are you letting people shop in store? And so, that kind of goes along with local SEO, because that's the listing people see right in the search results page, right before they go anywhere else. And so I think some stores were really in tune with what that customer journey was going to look like when they went to Google and searched for something. And others maybe missed that and didn't take care of their Google My Business updates the way that they could have or should have to maximize sales and get people back into understanding how they could shop with the store. And I think to this day, that Google My Business listing still, has check marks for, cleaning, disinfect regularly. Do you have shields at the register? Things like that, right? So, the degree that influences your actual ranking, I can't necessarily speak to on this, but the degree that influences someone sees you in the search results page, have you given them the information that's going to get them into your store, right? That information matters, and conveying that during the pandemic certainly became important. So I think SEO was important in that regard. And I think moving forward, SEO is going to play the same role that it always has. We know things start with Google, and we know that there's Google's enhancing certain tools. So you're going to have to pay attention to your Google My Business page and what information you need to keep relevant right there in Google when somebody searches it before they even leave for your website or your social pages. So managing that is going to become critical, or continue to be critical, I guess. And then, the one thing that coming throughout the pandemic and coming out of it that I think stores realized is that they need to have their products on their website, That's, if there was one thing I'd pick out and say, you need to do this, you need to have your products on your website. People research online before they buy in person. That's very well documented at this point. Before you're going to drive someplace, you're going to check to see, do they sell it? Is it available? And what do they charge for it? Right? Those are the questions every consumer asks for. And then they hop in the car and they come to your store. But if they don't know that, you're going to have a much harder time getting them to drive there in many instances. Maybe a repeat customer, maybe not, maybe they already know, but many other customers, those new customers that you want to attract, who are going to have a lot of lifetime value for you, those customers are going to be searching online before they drive someplace. So are you telling them that you have your products, and are they available, and what do they cost? So I think that's the kind of big takeaway coming out of it and moving forward, is products on your website.
Sure. And how difficult of a process is that for a local store to manage local inventory and try to be found for those individual products that a customer might be looking for?
Depends. We try to make it easier.
That was a little plug.
No, it's an overwhelming undertaking to do yourself. And there's very few stores that I've seen that have done that on their own successfully. Many have looked for a valued technology partner to help make that process easier, which is obviously what we do, is help them build and manage that infrastructure for their store and take care of all the technical construction and day-to-day management after that.
Sure. So another question, sort of, as it relates to the pandemic, our customer base was, I would say, pre-pandemic, we were, certainly weighing heavier on the informational website side. COVID hit, a lot of people were wanting to stay home. We had some customers already utilizing curbside pickup and local delivery, but certainly it felt like all in one day, everybody was asking about it. And I would say now, obviously that is a lot more of our business weighs toward curbside pickup and local delivery. Do you feel like a business today that is not doing that is missing an opportunity? Or do you feel like just having informational products is still a really good offering? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I'd be very glad to speak to that. So I feel like at this point in time, the independent retailer has the biggest advantage I've ever seen an independent retail store have in the last 10 years. And there's a few different reasons for that, and there's a few different factors at play. We'll start with the consumer. So the consumer has gotten used to, online ordering processes. And initially people reacted to that. If you went into the media 2014, 15, 16, 17, and you read a lot of trade publications, a lot of articles in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, things like that, you were going to see that, retail was dead. You were going to hear them say that, retail was totally disrupted, that Amazon, Chewy, Wayfair, I'm trying to think across industries, but these e-commerce players were totally going to wipe out the small business and the independent retail store, right? That was the narrative, because obviously people liked ordering online. They figured that out. They could get things to them in as little as 2 days. And some products took longer than that. And that was the way of the future. That was only part of the story. And the real part of the story that we've come to find out now, 3, 4, 5 years later, is that sure, those e-commerce companies and some other companies have showed us that consumers like ordering online. They like that convenience of looking for products and ordering online. But what we've also learned is people like getting products fast, right? And they like getting those products to their door in a fast, convenient way. Well, the independent retail store is positioned better than anybody else. And I guess with the exception of the big box stores, they're positioned well for this too, and they know it. But are positioned to get products to the customer's door faster than anybody else can. And Amazon, I don't think Chewy can in very many markets, but Amazon in some markets can get things to you on the same day. Mm-hmm. But when we're looking at a retail store, they have that last mile delivery. They have the products right there in their store. They're at the end of the distribution cycle. So they are right there, in most cases, 1 to 10 miles from their entire set of customers. And they can, once they receive an order, get something to the door faster than anybody else can. In some markets, like I said, Amazon can promise a same day delivery. In some markets, Chewy can promise a next day delivery, things like that. But the independent retailer with effort and energy can actually deliver products and goods to a consumer's doorstep faster than anybody else can. That's a huge competitive advantage at this point. So if you were to look at this a few years ago, you would never say the independent retailer had the best advantage. But if you were to look at this today and say, okay, I'm a consumer. I need this product to, right? I ran out of dog food, or I'm at a job site and I need a tool, or I need more materials for completing this project as a contractor, or any of these things. If you are saying I need that, if you go to Amazon, if you go to Chewy, if you go to any other e-retailer, and many other stores that aren't equipped for this yet, nobody's going to be able to get that to you within a couple hours. But you know who can? The independent retailer in your market can, if they're prepared for it. Many can't right now, but if they take the steps they need to prepare for that, they are actually going to be the one in the best position to succeed and serve that customer on the spot with same day delivery. And we're seeing stores doing things as little as 1 hour, 1 to 2 hour delivery for that too. So we know the stores can compete on price. We know that they can compete on loyalty. We know that there are tools now to improve the technology. We can talk about that a little bit of how to get to this place. But if you just step back and say, who has the biggest advantage now, knowing that consumers like to order products online and they like to get those things to themselves fast? It's the independent retailer.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like it's an overwhelming concept for a lot of independent retailers to feel like in order for me to compete with somebody like an Amazon or like a Chewy, I either am going to have to spend a small fortune or perhaps a big fortune. I'm going to have to spend a significant amount of time. I'm going to have to be an expert or find somebody who is an expert so that I show up on Google, or do I have to be paying for Google ads? What about social media? How can I be an expert in all of these things without spending so much money? I think that's always a surprise that I think I hear retailers have when they meet us. Like, wait, you do all of these different things and you make it efficient, you save us time. But it doesn't cost a lot of money. So I want retailers to be aware that there are, solutions out there that can help them. Because I think people are so overwhelmed, they don't even know where to start. What would you say? Would you agree with that, with not knowing where to start?
Yeah, so that it can feel overwhelming, right, to get to that place. And I think if you look at it from like a business standpoint and say, okay, where are my advantages? I've got the product here available in my store that I can make available to people to get access to near immediately in a few different ways. How do I achieve that, right? So the ways that you achieve that is you say, okay, store pickup. That's an obvious solution for a independent retail store, is to say, okay, I get my products online. They're all available. People can see it. They can order online for store pickup and come get them. They can order online for delivery as a second step too. So if I can get to that place where I know I can hire a delivery driver, have a van, or partner with a company like Uber or DoorDash or others that are starting to do these things, then I can have these products delivered right away to people too. So I can serve them that way. But when they start to get into the weeds of how to accomplish that, it can feel overwhelming quickly, like you talked about, because then you've got to market it, you've got to build it, you've got to merchandise it, you got to figure out how it all connects to everything, and somebody's got to manage it, answer it, take care of it. And so, those steps are certainly overwhelming, but they're not insurmountable at this point. And I think that's kind of that gap that needs to be bridged for a lot of independent stores. Is at one point it said, okay, Amazon, Chewy, companies like that, I know they raised a lot of money, they spent a lot of money, they didn't make money for years trying to get all this stuff built, right? So even if I have an advantage now in my infrastructure and being kind of this last mile delivery point where I can get things to people quickly if they come pick it up, or I deliver and I've got it all in my store, it still feels impossible to build an e-commerce website or to put 20,000 products on my website. It feels impossible to market this adequately in my local market. How would I ever show up for these things? I don't know how to do that. Or how do I get my products to show up in that, that Google shopping part where you see the actual products in the search results? That can feel overwhelming. And that is why we've had a model the way that we've had, where we manage it all for you, because we've known that these are the things that make you successful. It's not as insurmountable as it once was if you know the pieces and how to put them together, and how to manage them after that point. So I guess that's where I'm kind of at with my excitement for the entire independent retail market at this point. Is you can get there. You can get there, and there's a clear path to getting there, to where you have an online presence that competes like a big box store and outcompetes the e-retailers. And the path is being proven right now by other retail stores. So not to come back and plug the podcast again, but that's exactly, you asked me that question earlier. That's why we're launching this, because it's one thing we can tell this story and talk about how this is happening now, but the real excitement for me is going to be as we get these other store owners onto this show and let them talk about the ways that they're being successful with repeat delivery, with same day delivery, with in-store pickup orders, with merchandising that, so because it's achievable now and it's affordable to achieve it. You may need the right partner, but when you do, it certainly is pretty effective. So.
Can we say new media retailer again?
Yeah, I think so.
So I don't think I'd be mistaken in saying you feel like, some of the challenges that have taken course over the past 15 to 24 months have potentially created some opportunities for retail stores. But I'm interested to hear, what do you think the biggest challenges are that face a retail store right now?
This last environment that we were in during COVID obviously was pretty tragic for a lot of people, so it was a hard time. And I think a lot of retailers were probably affected both personally and professionally, maybe in some different ways throughout this period. So I think that they've shown and deserve some serious kudos for the resilience that these small business owners have shown across the country in figuring out ways to continue to do business, continue to keep people safe, deal with, anybody in their own personal lives or communities who were affected by this, and kind of push forward. And I think that's what the independent retailer is, right? They're the leader in their community in ways that they see and don't see, whether they hang the True Value flag, whether they have their own brand, whether they're a very visible structure in their communities, and people look to that store and to the owner and managers and people in those stores as the leader and the path forward in their community through times like this and in the good times too, because they're very visible for that reason. So I think, the challenges that they're going to have, I think the distribution challenges that many have experienced it with distributors kind of trying to get products there. There's obviously, depending on which industry you're in, lumber prices have spiked significantly. There's been all sorts of things that have happened there. Other, distributor issues and getting goods manufactured and over, all that was obviously disrupted during COVID. So I think some of that will smooth itself out. And I think that the challenge that the retailers are going to have is probably just reconnecting with their customer base as they kind of come back together in a community. And I don't mean to say that they lost touch with their customers, but I think customers are still figuring out how they shop now too, right? So if you are somebody who went into the store every single week to pick something up, or once a month, again, depends on the store, you were used to shopping a certain way, and that probably was disrupted during COVID. So now, do you shop online sometimes? Do you use store pickup? Do you just have things delivered? Are you one of those people who's desperate to go right back into the store? When are people going to feel safe? Do they feel safe now? Will they feel safe in a few months? Did they feel safe 6 months ago? And their lives didn't change that much. I think that's what I mean by reconnect is each store is going to have a challenge in kind of feeling out their customer base again as things return to a sense of normalcy, and saying, okay, what does life look like now? How do you shop? Am I meeting your needs the way that I did before? What's changed for you? What's changed for our community? What's changed for shoppers in general? And I think, so I think that's a challenge. It may not be, I'm not saying distribution, I'm not saying technology, but I think it's just what is your market need at this point? How do they shop again? I think reconnecting and figuring that out is probably going to be, because it's not like you can just do one thing to answer that question, right? It's going to be kind of a feeling out process and of understanding your market, because it has changed. Everybody's market's changed somewhat during this.
Do you feel like, I mean, obviously, we could probably create two types of customers pretty easily. One that is going to be more comfortable going inside the retail store, and one that is going to want probably some of the things that a store quickly offer during COVID, curbside pickup, or if you're not comfortable coming in, let me run that out to your car. Do you think if a store is not positioned to offer different ways to shop, that they're missing out or potentially turning away customers? Or what should a store be doing to prepare to meet the differing needs of different customers?
It's a really good question. If you are
Thank you.
if you are a retail store, you do need to have your products on your site. I think that's like, there's not really any good reason not to do that at this point. It's pretty crucial, because if you thought you were insulated before because you're like, oh, I'm in a small market, or I'm in a small rural market, the people deliver to those small rural markets now, they can probably order, if you were to test it yourself, if you don't believe me, get online. We're from a small community. I would think there'd be very few products that we would think we can't order online and have delivered to us in a timely fashion, and even in a small community at this point. So I think having your products on your website, because again, we talked about people still want it. They don't want to wait 5 to 7 days for it. They don't even want to wait 2 days anymore. So by having your products online and them knowing, oh, I can just go pick this up today, or they'll deliver it to me today or tomorrow, right? Those things help you out compete. Those things help you continue to win in your local markets, because there is that time value of money, that time factor at play. You've got it. So, but consumers only know that, because we talked about it. They only know that because if they're on your website, because they're going to start by researching for that product online. So if it's not there, they're just going to think you don't have it, right? So I think that's kind of table stakes at this point. Now, the question about allowing people to order in multiple ways. If you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So I'm kind of in that situation where, we build websites that enable that for stores. We enable this curbside pickup, we enable local delivery, and we even enable shipping too, if there's stores that have use cases for that or are competitive with that for some reason, which isn't everybody, but some have niche products for that. So of course, I'm going to say we see a lot of stores that are very successful when they diversify the way that somebody can shop with them. Is that necessary for everybody? I think there's probably some arguments in some industries where you could make the argument that, if you're a project-based business, maybe, or if you're offering something that really is handmade or is kind of unique in and of itself. I think there's some reasons to say, my customers can buy this way from me, and that's it. But I think that's going to be the exception rather than a rule. I think probably we're at an 80-20 rule here, where 80% of stores are going to need to enable some type of mechanism for multi-channel commerce for their business. What that looks like is probably a little bit different across industries, but I think there's going to be only maybe 20% that can get away moving into the future with only selling in one type of channel at this point.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. What do you feel like has been the biggest surprise to you over like the past 2 years about the retail industry or about our industry and how we're able to help retail stores?
Biggest surprise.
Or one thing that's like surprised you the most. Has it been introducing like new social platforms? Has that changed the way that stores should be talking to customers? Is it competition and different ways that looks like?
So I'm really trying to think of kind of an aha moment or a surprise moment in the industry. I think one of the things that stood out to me, and I still don't think that anybody does a great job of surfacing this yet, is how retailers offer competitive pricing with even the stores that we think of as low price competitors. When you look at a store's like loyalty program, oftentimes, so let's just say something simple like buy 10 of this item, get the 11th free, right? So that's a pretty common type of strategy. Or you do buy one, get one sales, things like that on certain items, or you have a loyalty program that enables that. But when you actually do the math on things like that, you look and you see that, a store, well, you should say my price for each one of the 10 of these. Well, let's do the math and say that retail price actually should be divided by 11, not by 10. So my price per each one is actually lower than you could have gotten that product from a big box or retail competitor, right? Because that 11th one being free made the price of all of them, the price for 11 was cheaper than buying 11 of that product from somebody else. So I think that surfacing that those, like, the loyalty programs kind of make stores pricing even more competitive. And I think that's something that we've seen too, probably to a surprising degree, is that there are many of the independent retailers have extremely competitive pricing. When you look at the prices that they're charging in store, again, versus e-retail and big box competitors, the pricing is super competitive. And I think that is kind of an unfortunate thing that consumers think, is that, oh, it's more expensive from a small business, right? But that's not really true. And when you look at things like loyalty programs, and then when you just go, line list price by price, you're going to realize that that's not actually the case. Many retailers are really competitive on price. So, I don't know how that gets changed overall across the entire country, across all the markets about consumers. I hope we can play our part in that. But
Right.
If I'm going to touch on a surprise, I think it's that continual eye-opening of, because they buy through co-ops, they buy through distributors, they're strategic buying and buying groups, and they're smart. Independent retailers are smart about the way that they buy and merchandise their store. They actually have really competitive pricing, and a lot of consumers don't realize that, which again can be part of the problem of not having your products and prices on your website, because they make the assumption, right, that you're more expensive when you're actually not. So maybe a little long-winded there, but that would probably be my surprise, I suppose.
I think my response would be very similar. I feel like I remember in the early days having conversations with stores and them saying, I don't think I need a website, because everybody in my town knows the products that I have. They know what I charge. They know what I do. And we don't have a competitor for 3 towns over. So like, I'm good, I'm set. And then seeing that shift to, wait a second, all of a sudden, my competitor is no longer three towns over. They're now on the internet. And how could I possibly compete? Do I want to put my pricing on the website? How would I, first of all, even begin? I have 20,000 UPCs in my store. How could I even possibly begin to do that? But then it's also, well, what if I charge $1 more? Is that going to make or break a deal? Is a consumer going to shop online if it's $1 more? Now I want to be competitive, and really looking into those things and figuring it out. But I do think that there is something to be said, so much so, for, continuing to support small businesses. And so I think sometimes we can get caught up on the details of like price and things like that. But I do think loyalty plays in there as well. But yeah, I think I would have a very similar answer. Yeah. Where, in terms of our industry, so, obviously websites is a part of that. Social media is a part of that. Email marketing, Google ads, whatever it is, whatever product it is you want to focus on. Where do you see like our industry going in the next like 2 to 3 years? Do you feel like you have any pulses on anything like new that a business might want to be aware of?
So like the technology industry in general, I think that the rivalries and partnerships that are developing in technology are really interesting to pay attention to. And, that might feel really abstract until you get it down to kind of a individual store level and say, why would a store pay attention to that? So in the technology industry, and actually there was an announcement, I think just last week, kind of a joint announcement between a company called Shopify and a company that I know everybody's heard of called Google, where they announced that they're going to be in additional partnership to help make Shopify stores and the products that are, on the Shopify platform. So any stores that have their website on Shopify, Google and Shopify partnered to help create more visibility for those products. And I'm not going to get into all the technical details. When we all shop, we know that we see product ads, we see products in the Google search results, all those types of things. One aspect of this is Google Shopping. But there's other ways too that Google is partnering with Shopify to make stores built on Shopify more successful. So if you're a store and you're looking at, okay, should I be on, what platform are you going to build my website on? Becomes a pretty important question, because the technology industry, are you on a platform that's kind of homemade? How is it being maintained? Or are you on, Shopify, or are you on BigCommerce or something like that, right? Because I'm going to ask that question if I'm paying attention, because I know that certain companies are big, they're publicly traded, they're making partnerships that I can kind of ride that wave to additional success for my business. Whereas if I'm not paying attention to that, or not paying attention to kind of the platforms, I don't know which partnerships or rivalries are happening. So again, one that doesn't necessarily affect us, but not us in a major way, but the Apple and Facebook have kind of had a standoff, which people have seen in the news, where Apple is not really giving Facebook access to anybody who uses an iPhone. They're not really giving Facebook access to track them in the same way, which means Facebook ads, took a little bit of a dive in effectiveness because of that, because that's a huge user base. So if you're somebody who relies heavily on Facebook ads, paying attention to, okay, there's a kind of a rivalry here. Do I need to start putting more money into Google ads or into circular program or things like that? Because I know that there could be an issue with my Facebook ads effectiveness based on what's going on with technology. And then similarly too, it seems like everybody's partnering with Shopify, but Facebook is partnered with Shopify too to enable something called Facebook Shops, which is where an independent retail store owner, if they're using Shopify again, can push all of their products right into a catalog on Facebook. So Facebook users can shop their catalog, and the plan is to even let them check out without ever leaving Facebook too. So, I guess that's a little bit about, some of the things that are happening in our industry. I don't know if that necessarily answers the question or everything that it encompasses, but our industry, technology in general, is seeing stronger and stronger partnerships develop and rivalries develop between these big companies that have been successful. And I think every store owner and many consumers rely on these technologies for themselves and for their business to be successful. So paying attention to the rivalries and partnerships and trying to align your business kind of among them can be pretty critical element of success too.
Sure. Do you feel like in this space, whether it be email, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it may be, do you feel like there's one platform or avenue to talk to your customers that is still underutilized at this point?
Could you say that one more time, Francesca? Sorry.
Yeah, of course. No, that's fine. Do you feel like in terms of retail stores taking advantage of products, whether it be Google ads, Facebook, email marketing, whatever it may be, do you feel like there's one thing that stands out to you that stores are still underutilizing at this point?
Email marketing.
Email marketing. Sure. Interesting.
Yeah. I think, there's some of the other tools get a lot of press and are exciting. Everything that's new gets exciting, right? So we had stores that asked us if they should do TikTok, which was, because that was in the news, and is this something I should be doing and paying attention to? And I was thrilled that they were paying attention.
Yeah.
My answer for that was no. TikTok at this point is not a valuable use of resources.
Right.
But the email is, email has been around a really long time at this point, and email is not necessarily the most attractive thing because it's not new. It's not, as exciting maybe, build and send email blasts, right? That just sounds like work, right? That doesn't sound like make a fun dance video and that's going to bring people in my stores. That sounds like, if we could all figure out how to do that, that sounds like a lot more fun, a lot more exciting. But the idea of saying, okay, I'm going to sit down, build an email marketing campaign. It's going to be about my store, about the products that I'm offering, and it's going to get out there to the right people who may have signed up on my email list on my website, signed up on my email list in an event, or have come in the store and shop with me, and I've got that information stored in my POS. Those are really good potential customers that we should be targeting as an independent retailer with a quality marketing message, telling them about your new products, telling them about your event coming up, your discounts, your deals, right? That's a really, really valuable place. And people check their email. I think it's like 99% of people check their email at least once a day or something, crazy like that. Mm-hmm. Don't quote me on that stat because I made that up.
I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, please don't. But but it is something like pretty statistically significant like that. And then I think as you go down the line, it's even like, whatever percentage of people check their email every single hour or every 5 minutes probably. Right.
Yeah.
So, these other mediums come out and they're exciting and there's use cases for them. But the most underutilized one, I think, is everybody should be pouring resources into email marketing. And they're not. I think that's a pretty critical one.
Yeah. I think the other thing to be said too for email marketing is, we've seen the rise and fall of some of these platforms come out. So, TikTok, let's just use that for an example, certainly on the rise right now. Will it be around 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Will it still be as popular? Who's to say? But if that platform goes away, what do you do with all that content? Like you
Right.
just lost all those videos you made. You don't
Right.
own that content. Email is one of the few platforms that you do own all of that content. Like you can export those emails, you can put them into a different provider if you want. So I definitely think there is something to be said for that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's like owning that information, right? Becomes pretty critical because we do know that like the especially social media platforms
Sure.
hold a lot of power. They choose who can be on their platform or not, and they deplatform people that they don't want to be on their platform. They censor messages that they want to censor. Now we can obviously that could be a whole different podcast about that topic, and not necessarily one for the New Media Retailer podcast. Just one more plug there, but but that is true, right? And again, that's where paying attention to the technology that you're using and what the rules are of that technology becomes pretty important too. An email is one where once people have given you permission until they unsubscribe,
right.
You can send them emails. That might not be the case. You could really rely on Facebook, and like we mentioned, Apple and Facebook changed the rules, and all of a sudden you're not reaching people that you thought you could reach easily forever, right? So you better have been kind of collecting their emails along the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely a great way to hold on to customer information that you might not be able to with other platforms for sure. Yeah. I think I just have one final question for you. If you could give one piece of advice to a retail store today, what do you think it would be?
Get your products on your website. Yeah, I know. I guess we could do like beginner, intermediate, advanced advice. I don't know if I can come up with those all on the spot though. But I think probably we're looking at a place where many retailers have not achieved that yet. And even if they do have their products on their site, is it all of them? Is there a plan to get them up consistently? Like, there's there plans to take them down once you don't sell them anymore? Is when you go to these trade shows, because they are opening back up again, and you buy a new product and you have them in your store, is there a plan to get those on your website, or is there not? Like, did you do the data entry once and there's no plan moving forward, right? So I think that probably no matter where you're at, you could look at your online catalog and say, I have a portion of them on here, and trying to figure out, okay, do I have the coverage that I need for all of my products? Do I have a plan moving forward? Do I have a plan to keep these up to date on here, or not? And I think that becomes a pretty big thing to think about, and something that I would give the advice to any retailer to say, focus on that, because that's the bread and butter. All these other marketing tools, whether email, social, ads, do them, but a lot of like what's going to make them effective is having that catalog on your site.
Absolutely. Having that content to highlight. So not to put you on the spot, but do you think this was good enough to be the pilot episode?
Oh boy, I don't know if we're going to know that until we listen back to it.
Okay, all right. I'll take the pressure off.
That's a little tough. It's like we got to watch game film, right? After you play a sport, you got to watch the film to see how you did. Well, what do you think? Can you turn the tables?
Yeah, I think it went well. I was very nervous, to be honest with you guys. I was very nervous. I've listened to a lot of podcasts over the past 3 to 4 weeks, just trying to get an idea of flow, of tone, vibe, things like that. So like you said, I'm very interested to watch this back and see how it came out. I feel like I was so easily swayed every time I would listen to a new podcast, like, oh, I definitely wanted to be that style. And then I would listen to a new one and, oh no, I definitely wanted to be that style. So I'm interested to watch it back as well and see how it went.
and we won't put this much pressure on the stores that we have on, not the pressure.
Yeah. We won't put you in the hot seat.
You pretty much automatically make it onto the show, right? We're not gonna grade you afterwards. Although I guess maybe I'm getting a grade. I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous now for the review. But yeah, cool. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for taking the time to do this interview.
Thank you for coming up with this idea. I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be really, really valuable for retail stores to get to hear firsthand from other retail stores, things that, they're doing, things that are working, maybe things that they tried that didn't work. And what does life look like now in the store? So I think it's going to be really valuable.
The New Media Retailer Podcast, subscribe below or listening wherever available to you, right? We can end with a corny thing like, or is that what people do?
We'll tweak that a little bit.
Yeah, we're still learning. Bear with us, and we hope that you come join us on the show.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Keegan. Have a good day.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Bye.